Welcome into another post-game edition of Spits and Suds. Happy President's Day, everyone. I'm Gavin Spittle of 105.3 The Fan, joined by D Magazine's Robert Tiffin for today's post-game show. And my friend, this one was if you take a step back as a Stars fan, and all things considered, I think it was an awesome point, but it was also a great game. And sometimes you just have to realize that it was a great game. And I thought the Stars played really, really well. It was a gutsy effort, minus Miro Heiskanen, Duchesne, Dadonov, Hakanpää, Lundqvist on the road, on a road trip, front end of a back-to-back, and I thought you played really well.
Yeah, I think everyone kind of figured when you saw everyone who was out of the lineup, even up to the last second, right before they dropped the puck, finding out Duchesne was going to be out too. Everyone kind of figured it'd be a weird game, and your worst fear is that it was going to be a nightmarish game. But I think it's to Dallas's great credit that you didn't really feel the absences of a lot of those players until you got to, round 7 and 8 of the shootout.
Yeah, absolutely. I was trying to think. I bet they would have used Heiskanen, Duchesne, and Dadonov there.
100%.
So I think, definitely Duchesne. But it's one of those things that, the Stars have a hurdle to climb. They played a lot of basic hockey today, kind of went basic. And I just said to myself, I kind of enjoy this basic hockey. One of the things is they showed me that physicality that I've been talking about, and especially against Boston, a team that normally is the one pushing you around. And I thought throughout the day, the Stars had the edge there. And I thought it really helped in their deep forecheck. I felt as though they had the Bruins defensemen on their heels for the Bruins, who are really good at breakouts with the speed of Pasternak and Marchment and Marchant, and others. I mean, I just felt as though the Bruins really couldn't get going throughout the day.
Yeah, Dallas is pretty relentless. And, to a certain extent, I think to a certain extent, you kind of expect them to come out with that extra jump, of a team where it's an all hands on deck sort of scenario. So you expect a little bit extra jump, but you don't expect that to kind of last the whole game. And, to Dallas's credit, it lasted about 58 minutes. Aside from here and there with some scrambly portions, they really were the better team pretty consistently. You even had Joel Hanley stepping up and giving Brad Marchand the business and dragging him into a fight. I mean, I don't think anyone had that on their bingo card. Esa Lindell throwing a good hit. I mean, they were getting some people stepping up and making plays and making life hard for the Bruins, which, for as good as this team's been, even last year, them winning the President's Trophy by a mile, it was good to see.
Yeah, and then we had a Hockey East tilt in the net with Jeremy Swayman from the University of Maine versus Boston University's Jake Oettinger. And we know Jake, and that when he plays in Minnesota and Boston, he loves playing those games. And I thought both played, brilliant. I mean, can't be on Oettinger. All 3 goals that Boston scored were basically, the third one was tough because they were, Stars couldn't get it out of the zone, and that Pasternak one-timer is just brutal. But, it wasn't like Oettinger, they were basically kind of missed assignments that resulted in those Bruins goals.
Yeah, I think that's right. The second goal is really the only one that you'd even think about, and that's still a really big guy who Suter was on the ice with. I think it was Pouliot, and they were kind of switching off, and so Suter's trying to catch back up. But a big guy with a big reach, and Suter doesn't quite get there. But even that one, I'm not inclined to put totally on Suter. It's a little scrambly, and it's this big guy, 6'5". Yeah, he's got the reach. But, credit to Oettinger because he had some really big saves, too. And in addition to those 3 goals he gave up, I mean, he had 2 saves on a Grizzlick on a 2-on-1 and then a shorthanded, like essentially a breakaway in the second period. He had a couple other really, really nice saves where he was calm, right? When Oettinger's at his best, he's really technically sound. And the shootout was kind of a great exhibition for that because you just saw skater after skater come in and try something, and him just running, the Jake Oettinger program in his mental computer, just save, blocker, save, blocker, save, just over and over and over. And that's when he's at his best. He can really make everyone feel more confident. And the team really needed that on a kind of scrambly day. I think Oettinger settled everyone down.
Yeah. And I think the Stars, when you're a great goalie, part of being a great goalie is you get great breaks, and the whistle blew, and, Swayman clearly had that puck when it was knocked in by Wyatt Johnston. And then, in overtime, or the shootout, I should say, my goodness, Craig Smith was just, that was a wonderful move, and just stood there. And I thought the pad was going to knock it in. And in fact, the pad stopped it, and it just cuddled up next to the post. So
Yeah.
overtime loss, but it's one of those things that, I mean, it's just the luck of the puck when it comes down to it. I mean, I look at all the analytics, and basically it was even throughout. I mean, shots on goal, there was a major differential, but I mean, you're playing an all-star goalie who stepped up.
Yep. Dallas was definitely shooting from all over the ice, so the shot on goal totals were really tilted, but that worked to their favor too, because especially against a goalie as good as Swayman, part of I know Olmark, I think, won the Vezina last year, but Swayman was a big part of that team. They were kind of a tandem even in the playoffs. There was talk about that. And the Stars just kind of decided, look, we're not going to try to get too fancy. We know we're going to have some AHL players in there, and the defense pairings are all going to be kind of scrambled. And the lines even, losing Duchesne, now you're having to rotate Fox and Smith kind of in, and Robertson and Hintz take turns there. And so they just seemed like they kind of decided, it wouldn't shock me if it was an explicit instruction from the coaching staff, just look, shoot, pucks on net, pucks on net, pucks on net, which usually isn't the Stars' go-to approach, right? It always seems like they're the ones getting outshot, but hanging into games. I shouldn't say always, but the times where they have been pretty seriously outshot, you remember them this year, and then you feel like, wow, how are they hanging in there? And today was the exact opposite, where, like you said, and the Bruins were getting quality chances. The Stars were getting lots of shots. And really, it was pretty even. Overtime is probably where it hurts the most, because, that empty net goal, Pasternak is elite for a reason. But in overtime, they had so many chances.
Yeah.
And even Thomas Harley putting that one off the post. Sagan had 3 great looks.
Yeah.
Even before he got to the shootout, he had 3 essentially looks all alone on Swayman, and no one could beat him. And that's where you kind of feel like it slipped through their fingers pretty clearly in overtime. They were by far the better team in overtime, but just couldn't get it done.
Yeah, they protected Pouliot today and Petrovic, and each only, one played 12-24 and the other played 12-49, and the next Stars defenseman was Hanley at 16-19. So Thomas Harley, almost 30 minutes of ice time today, 29-41. But overall, I thought the call-ups, they didn't do anything to worry me. I think, some Stars fans will see them on the ice for that first goal, and it was pointed out on the broadcast. However, to me, that was Joe Pavelski's man, and that was on the weak side, like you mentioned. But overall, I thought they played decent. They, didn't really oh my God, they're on the ice.
Yeah, they're 2 veteran players, right?
Yeah.
They both have, I think, if I remember this, they both have over 200 games of NHL experience. So you don't make it to the NHL and stay there for 200 games cumulatively if you don't understand the game really, really well. So there's maybe a little bit of rust, but like you said, even though they're on ice for a goal or two, you don't really, I don't really think you can hang those goals on them at all. I think by and large, they came in and, again, Dallas is such a good team. You can have half the defense on a day when you're playing a weird day game against Boston, shorthanded, when you don't even have all the skaters in your lineup, and they still look like a really good team. That's how good Dallas is. That's how, you mentioned Thomas Harley. He can make a whole defense look good. Esa Lindell stepped up and played like a top pairing defenseman. Even Ryan Suter playing, the high second pairing minutes, he played really well today.
Yeah.
He had a chance out in front too, right in front of the net, that he almost scored a beautiful goal on a feed. Who was it from? It was feed. Someone set him up all alone. I think it was Johnston, who also had a great game.
Yeah. And he went to the backhand, which was the right,
it was
call.
the right move. Yeah.
But and that's what I think I want Spits and Suds listeners to understand. You saw the Stars missing the net a lot, and that's what happens when you go against, honestly, Jake Oettinger or Jeremy Swayman, because you have to pick the corners, because these guys are not going to let in the ordinary goal. So as many shots that the Stars had on net, they missed the net a lot, but that was because they had to go to certain corners or try to go underneath Swayman. And a lot of times that means you miss the net, and Suter did the right thing. Swayman had it covered, so he tried to go high and missed on the backhand. I actually thought it was a pretty good move by Suits.
Yeah, it was. He did have a goal too. So give him credit.
Yeah.
He almost had 2 goals in this game. It really shouldn't be lost. Thomas Harley, again, he is such a great player. He was the Stars' top defenseman, like you said, playing almost half the game, with overtime factored in, of course. But he's just incredible. He's just incredible. He can play with anyone, play on either side, and he's just been remarkable. I mean, I think there's an argument to be made that Thomas Harley could be maybe the number one reason the Stars have been as good as they have this year. That's probably a separate conversation. But Esa Lindell and Ryan Suter pitching in a game like this, where they're playing out of sorts, they're playing more minutes. Not only do they not wilt or not get exhausted playing a few more minutes than usual against a good team, instead they both step up and they both score goals. I mean, Esa Lindell, for as much as he's used to playing kind of with a more stay-at-home type defenseman with Hakanpää, he stepped up on that rush when he scored that third goal early in the third period. Lindell stepped up and he went immediately. There was no hesitation, and he wasn't even looking to, dump it in or play it safe or look for the pass or look for the trailer. As soon as he got to the blue line, you could kind of tell he was thinking, I'm on my off wing. And, Esa Lindell, he's always had a good shot, always. I mean, he was much more of a power play. He was playing on the power play back in the day a lot, on the second power play behind Klingberg. And even in the AHL, he was really known for being a great guy who could play at the blue line, got a really good shot, traditionally gets it through traffic. And, credit to him. When he gets the chance to go in a game like this, he recognizes the situation and knows, it doesn't matter what the situation is. We got to take advantage of this chance. And that's what he did.
Man, I know it's a June, July, August conversation, but every single time I watch Thomas Harley, I think restricted free agent. That salary cap is, I know it's plus 4 million this year, but man, every time I watch him, I'm like, wow, he's probably heading up towards 6.5 to 7.
Yeah, it depends on if they bridge him or not, or try to go for the long deal. I think, my money is on probably a bridge, just because the long-term deal after this season, it's going to be a lot of money if you try to sign him for 8 years after this deal, but or however many years you want to sign him for. But I don't know. They might try to go, 5 for 5 or something and buy out a year of UFA or something. I don't know. There are people, Marchenko and everyone get paid a lot more than I do to figure out this stuff. Yeah, he's making himself a whole lot of money with games like this.
Yeah, he really is making himself really, really valuable. So there was a question. Let's see. Fat Jimmy _43. Will the Stars be shorthanded again tomorrow against the Rangers? I have no idea if they can even call anyone up like Blumel again. If Duchesne is still out, or if they're up against the cap, will Pouliot or Petrovic be still up? Does Miro make it all or in time? So those are all questions that I think we'll find out soon. They did place the Donoff on long-term injured reserve, so there is some cap space. I think they're fine, there. But we'll see. Though, we don't know the extent of Duchesne's injury right now.
Yeah, Duchesne, or all we know is I think Lundqvist and Hakanpää are not on the road trip, and we know Heiskanen was home with a baby who was born last night. So, it's possible that he'll probably join him on the trip. I wouldn't expect him to be home, hopefully all is well and everything. So there's no need for him to stay for a long period of time. So whether that's tomorrow or whether that's later in the road trip, I guess we'll see. But in theory, right, if he's not available, I don't know that paternity leave like that would qualify for them for an emergency recall.
Yeah,
I don't think so. So Duchesne, maybe, but if Heiskanen's back, they could theoretically go 11-7 tomorrow. But that's still a dicey proposition. And again, that means you're still playing a lot of young defensemen or kind of borderline AHL defensemen, which you can get away with for a game or two, but that's not really what you want to do right before the toughest stretch of the schedule of the entire season for the Stars. So it'll be a good proving ground for them.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Aaron Thackman asked, I just don't understand how they were not able to hold another late lead, and they were out playing the Bruins, but struggled to score. I think you're playing Swayman's gotta be top 10 in the league right now, right, Robert? As far as just goalies. They have 2 of them, but
yeah, to be honest, I don't have his numbers right in front of me, but he's that sort of goalie. He was last year too. He's one of those goalies where he on a good team especially. It reminded me a lot of Jim Montgomery in his first season with the Stars with Ben Bishop, where his systems, as much as he was built a little bit more as an offensive type of guy coming out of Denver, Montgomery's system is fairly conservative in terms of like defensive structure and everything. So it's going to make a goalie who's technically sound, like Swayman or Bishop, these bigger goalies, it's going to make them look really good when the team is in the right spots. And that's
it's pick your poison. Allmark played on Saturday and actually looked really good. I watched some of that game against the LA Kings. Kings scored late and then scored in overtime coming out of the penalty box. But overall, I thought Omar played really well. So you kind of knew you were getting Swayman, and it is what it is. So at that, man, I would say that, they did their best to hold on, but then it went 6-5. They got caught in their zone, and these things happen. And they kind of widened out the Stars with their passing, and that opened up David Pasternak on the on his one-timer side, so to speak. And he's like Ovechkin. He doesn't miss much. And that was a blazer of a shot.
Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. AutoTrader.
Listening to your favorite podcast? That's smart. Earning your degree online from Southern New Hampshire University? That's really smart. With 24/7 access to coursework, no set class times, and dedicated student support, you can go to school when and where it works for you. Low online tuition means you can even do it for less. And dedicated student support means we'll be with you from day one to graduation and beyond. Join a community of learners just like you. Go to snhu.edu today to start your free application.
Dive into Seafood Month at Taquerías Arandas and Arandas Seafood this Lent. Visit any Taquerías Arandas location for 30 times delicious shrimp at a special deal, or try our shrimp cocktail, seafood soup, or seafood tacos. Don't miss out. Head to Arandas Seafood off I-10 and Mercury or Highway 249 between Belleville, North Houston and Fallbrook for a taste of the sea. Make this Lent unforgettable with the freshest catches and tantalizing flavors at Taquerías Arandas and Arandas Seafood. Check them out online at taqueriasarandas.com.
It was a perfect shot right inside the post, which it didn't even need to be. It was, if he ripped it so well, he hit it so true. He could have put it another foot towards the center, and it still would have gone in. But it was right inside the post. I mean, a perfect shot. The one thing I will say is that the feed to him, Seguin was a little bit in the setup there initially. Seguin was a little eager to block the initial shot, which I get. That's what forwards are taught to do when you're at the top there. And especially when it's a shot from the high slot, you want to get your stick in that lane. But as soon as Seguin moved his stick over to take the shot instead of taking away the pass out that way, you could just see, right, in retrospect, I guess I would have taken the wrist shot from the top through about 6 bodies in the crease. That's a much lower percentage shot than Pasternak ripping a one-timer completely unmarked.
Yeah, to put it in a Spits and Suds perspective, when you watch the Dallas Cowboys, you hear people say, hold the edge. Yeah. And holding the edge is basically, I know you think you can get to the quarterback, but that's not your primary job. If you're going to do it, you have to keep the outside, because otherwise they're going to use that and they're going to roll out to your side and you're going to be caught in the middle. And that happened to the Cowboys a lot. And I think that's a good perspective of what happened with Seguin. You don't want to fault a guy because he wants to be in the action and wants to block shots. But when you leave that guy just a little bit more room, he's going to take advantage.
It is one of those. This game, it's so good to remember as a fan that this is a tie, right? This really is a tie.
Yes.
Even in overtime, it's a gimmick. This isn't what the playoffs are going to look like. It's not nothing. Like, the job is to get points in the regular season. And obviously, as a fan, you're invested in the game. It stinks when you walk away and the other team has won, technically. But in every sense, really, the Stars put up a great effort in this one. I mean, Boston had to scramble and claw at home against a team that was, a skater short. I can't remember the last time the Stars, without a last-minute injury or something, actually had to play with only 17 skaters. I don't know if it's happened in the Jim Nell era. I'm probably forgetting something. But he's, as much as they've been tight to the cap for a long time, it's been really, really rare. So, yeah, you're going to get those times where a player makes that one little decision where they think, I can shut this down right here, and they cheat just a tiny bit, and then it leads to a goal which ties the game and goes to overtime, and then to a shootout, and then to another shootout. I mean, they had three sets of 3 rounds of the shootout in this one, and that's what it took. And then it still ended with the Stars, with Craig Smith putting a puck on the goal line that happened to get kicked away blindly by the back of Swayman's skate. I mean, it's one of those, I get it if you don't feel good about this game, but really, really, I wish they still had ties for games like this, because that's really the way to walk away from this game, is saying, like, all right, they held serve, wasn't a disaster. There's enough to feel good about. Let's move on. It's a long season.
Yeah, and there are 3 more games on what I feel is the toughest stretch, and you said that as well, Robert. At Rangers tomorrow, at Senators on Thursday, then at Carolina on Saturday night. And you have to look at it from this perspective. Out of a possible 8 points, you've collected 6. That's really, really good against teams like the Oilers, the Bruins, and Carolina. So, and by the way, Nashville's fighting for a wild card spot, and you basically dismantled them in their own building. So, I mean, usually people get on me for being like, oh, you're a Stars pessimist, but I try to be a Stars realist. And what I'm trying to tell people is this is a great stretch for this Dallas team right now. I know it doesn't seem that way. A couple of bounces, maybe it would have been 8 out of 8, but at the same time, 6 out of 8 clearly keeps you in the running. You're on the road. Any point on the road is great, but when you're out, Heiskanen, Duchesne, Dadonov, Hakanpää, Lundqvist, and you're playing against the Bruins, a team that you've really struggled against, I think it's a great point.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's a great point. Yeah, you can look at different spots and say they could have done this or that and come away with 2 points, but the Bruins are a really good team. And if you're able to put up this effort against the Bruins with this team, with this depleted roster, after taking a point, off Edmonton the other night, there's so much good to take away from this. It's kind of, it's not really worth the effort to get caught up in kind of despair and annoyance. If you need that catharsis for a minute, you just have to process your anger at them losing and yelling and tweeting, go for it, go nuts. But, any sort of big, just look at their last 10 games, right? I think they've won like 8 of their last 10 games, or like you said, they've got 6 of 8 points. This isn't the traditional post All-Star break slump. Oh no, they lost some momentum. Now they have to kind of get it back together. No, there's every reason for them to lose this game. And then you had players like Wyatt Johnston, who had a fantastic game. Jason Robertson, who quietly had a fantastic game. In a lot of other ways, right? When they needed him to be a stud, I think he led the forwards in ice time again with like 25 minutes or something like that. Jason Robertson just continues to be that sort of player. They've got players like this stepping up, even when you lose someone like Matt Duchesne, who's been so crucial. There's every reason to feel really good about this team, regardless of the result in a borderline game like this, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Kenny Howard asked me during the game, Robert, what's with opposing players trying to rattle Wyatt Johnston lately? I do not recall Robo or Hintz getting this treatment in the past. What am I missing? I always enjoy the pod. Thanks, gents. Well, Kenny, as I responded to him, Robert, I think that means that Wyatt Johnston's doing a good job in that dirty area. When, I don't think Swayman knew it was Delandria that was taking the extra hacks when he got rattled.
Yeah,
I think he was
that's
just
right.
mad, and that's the kicking and then getting up. But Wyatt Johnston, cool customer. And, just the tip. And I thought the TV did a great job of saying, watch the hand up top and how it turned so that he could do, a much easier job as far as tipping the puck. And, he's a good one. There's no doubt about it. It's pretty amazing.
He's just, they even trusted him enough. It's, the coaches are the ones who know these players, better than just about anyone, right?
Yeah.
They see him day in, day out on the road in practice, right? Coming to the rink in the morning, sitting down with them in video sessions, right? They know exactly, which player has the toughest time admitting mistakes on video or whatever, right? Which is, as any human, doesn't enjoy that process. But they know these guys. And Pete DeBoer put Wyatt Johnston out with 2 other forwards in overtime tonight. They rolled with a 3-forward set just because they don't have Heiskanen, right? They don't have a lot of these players. They need Duchesne to kind of anchor these sets. And that's how much trust Wyatt Johnston has at this point, second year, still what, 20 years old? It's just ridiculous when you really look at the big picture of how good Johnston has been and how you can't rattle him, right? That's why they're trying to rattle him, because he's so good in all these different ways, on the penalty kill, on the power play, in empty net situations, and 3-on-3. Even putting him out in the shootout, like, give him a shot. Why not? He's good at everything else. He's that sort of player where the other teams are trying to rattle him any way they can, because so far the NHL has not succeeded in rattling him, whether it's Game 7 against Seattle last year or whether it's a crazy day game in Boston like this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric T. Wallace says, judging from the comments on the Stars' final score post, it appears fans are expecting nothing short of perfection. What's wrong with these people? Well, I would say it's actually not a bad thing, in that if people are looking for perfection, they're paying attention to the game, and that's a good thing when it comes to hockey here in DFW. So, but I agree with you. 6 points thus far on the toughest stretch of the season. Heck yeah. You can't be hard on this team with what they were missing. All right. Want to plug, Robert, you had a really interesting article in D Magazine. Everyone's got to go check out D Magazine. Click, 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 click. It's titled, "It's Time for the Stars to Exit Their Comfort Zone." And you talk about paying up for a defenseman. Why don't you go into the article and what you were referencing?
Yeah, for a long time, one of the things that Jim Nill gets a lot of deserved credit for, has gotten a lot of deserved credit for in his over a decade with the Stars, is that he's found ways to bring good players in without usually signing them to really long deals with high cap hits that hamstring the Stars. Now, you could talk about an extension here or there, right? Whether it's Jamie Benn or someone else where the deal doesn't, or even Seguin, last year where the deal doesn't look as good down the road for whatever reason. But by and large, when the Stars have had a need to address an issue, whether it's been goaltending, in the past or on up front, right? One of the first things that Nill did when he came in back in 2013 was get, Horkoff and Seguin, and a player like Ray Whitney was in there too. I think, or maybe Whitney was in the year before, but regardless, he got center depth immediately, and he did it in a way that was a bargain, right? He got Seguin for what turned out to be a bargain because he was on a great contract and they didn't really have to sell the farm to do it. Spezza the next year, right? Then he got the Steven Johnson, Patrick Sharp for basically a song for an aging Trevor Daley and a borderline player in Ryan Garbett. And then Ben Bishop, which he got the rights for because he had already at that point, it was pretty clear players wanted to come play in Dallas, regardless of who was coaching them. Players wanted to play in Dallas. And then, in the last 5 years or so, it's been these veterans who want to come to Dallas, because they have their choice, whether it's Pavelski or Suter or Corey Perry or Matt Duchene, where they're willing to take a discount and come to Dallas. So for the longest time, Jim Nill's gotten a lot of credit, which he deserves, for solving problems for the Stars or building this roster and making it better without breaking the bank. And really without trading first-round draft picks. Aside from the Nils Lundqvist situation, the only other time he traded a first-rounder was the two conditional first-rounders for Matt Zuccarello back in 2019. And those didn't end up turning into first-rounders anyway. So now's the time, though, where, as we saw today, they're having to call up 2 AHL players, good players, but AHLers, because they're so thin on defense, and especially right-handed. They didn't have any right-handers on defense until they called up, I think, Petrovic is a righty. And now's the time. This is the problem. They saw it last year against Vegas. The defense beyond the top two of Heiskanen and Harley is not. You don't really have a reliable second pairing there. You need someone to put with Esa Lindell, or if you put Harley down with Lindell, you need someone to put with Heiskanen. The Stars just don't have that player. Lundqvist hasn't become that player. Suter isn't that player anymore. Maybe he once was, but it's pretty clear, even DeBoer knows that that's not the case anymore based on how he's using him this year. So it's time to pay up, whether it's Chris Tanev or Sean Walker or Noah Hannafin or whoever it is. There's really, it'd be nice if Jim Nill worked some magic. I don't see that happening at the deadline. The prices usually favor the sellers at this point in the year most of the time. You can wait long and sometimes get a bargain, right? Because a team doesn't want to lose a player for nothing. But the very best players out there, the players like Chris Tanev, who I think is and should be the Stars' number one target, I really don't see how Jim Nill cannot get a player of Chris Tanev's caliber, given how good the rest of this roster is. You can't squander this opportunity.
I was going to ask you who your primary target is. So it's Chris Tanev.
I think it has to be. Again, that's not to preclude there are other good targets out there. David had a piece where he even mentioned someone like Radko Gudas could be a good, low-key kind of depth player. And I could see that, actually. I could see that. Again, you have questions about how that impacts the rest of the roster. And right now you have questions about health, right? What with Hakanpää and Lundqvist. I mean, you don't know it. I don't know when they're coming back. It seems like it's probably not long-term with Hakanpää. Lundqvist with concussion symptoms, who knows, right? So it wouldn't shock me if Nill got 2 right-handed defensemen at this point today, where we're sitting looking at this roster. But Chris Tanev is so obviously the perfect sort of player to fill this hole in the roster. I don't see how you cannot get him or an equivalent player. That you can't squander another playoff run because your defense isn't strong enough in that second pairing.
He's one of those guys too that, you just know he's going to leave it all on his ice. I mean, he leaves his chiclets on the ice. He leaves body parts on the ice. And is he a fancy player? No, but I mean, he's just one of those guys that's going to give it all. And I think that leaves an impression in the locker room, and it's almost addictive when you see a guy sprawling and just basically putting his body on the line.
Mm-hmm. This is, and the other player, I mentioned this in the article too. in 2016 when the Stars were gearing up, when they had that great team that was scoring left and right, and finished top of their division again that year. Dan Hamhuis was their primary target from Vancouver, another veteran defenseman who could fill out their top four. They just needed a little bit more depth on defense, and Vancouver ended up raising the price at the last minute, and so Jim Nill walked away, which is a smart thing to do. The rumor I've heard is that they wanted Nichushkin. It went from wanting like Brett Ritchie to saying no, we want Valeri Nichushkin, which in 2016 was an outlandish ask. The year after that, they probably would have been much happier, given how his season went the year or two after that. But regardless, they pivoted, and Jim Nill got Chris Russell, who in a lot of ways had that exact same element that you mentioned for Chris Tanev. He wasn't the complete defenseman that Chris Tanev is. He was much more of a kind of, he could skate, but he was a little smaller, and he was known for blocking a lot of shots, which is, the analogy I always love about blocking shots is that it's kind of like killing rats. It's good to do it when they're there, but if you're doing it all the time, you probably got bigger problems. So if you're having to block shots all the time, then that probably means you're allowing too many shots to begin with. But it's better to be good at blocking shots than not good at blocking shots. But Tanev is good in all three zones. I mean, he's a defenseman that makes you better in all facets of the game. In addition to that, those last 2 minutes, right? I mean, Chris Tanev is the perfect sort of player for that situation when you're holding a 1-goal lead in the playoffs against a team coming at you with everything. He's a guy who you want on the ice out there with a little bit more size, who can get out to those areas you need him to and defend the crease. And again, not saying he's the only player that could possibly help the team or get them over the hump, but you need him or a player like him at this point. It's so clear. It's rare that you can point to one specific issue with a team and say they need this specific thing. But with Dallas, I think you kind of have to say, that's pretty much the only area left to upgrade for them. And you've got to get it.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting too? Like, we kind of forget that if Bixel was in Texas still, would he have been called up? And I'll give one other one. I think Gavin Bayreuther would have been on this team.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a guy with a lot of NHL experience.
Yep.
But unfortunately had that tough injury and has been out all year for Texas. So Texas was extremely thin on defense as it was. So to call up two of their D-men, I'm interested to see what they throw out there. But it is interesting that, the Bixel move. And I did want to touch on it because someone said to me the other day, on Twitter, they said he's, going there to continue to grow his game, so to speak. And the reality is he had that option to do that, but I think all GMs would prefer their people to stay in-house. They can watch them, they can play their system, learn the North American game, because there is certainly an adjustment between, Sweden and Switzerland and, here in Texas, as far as just the smaller rink, the physicality, there's just, there's differences. So I'm sure everything will be fine, but it would have been interesting. Would Big Bix have been called up?
Yeah, it's such a cruel irony, right? That 20, 30 games ago, Nils Lundqvist was having trouble cracking the lineup and everyone was saying, well, that's a good problem to have because the defense has been so healthy. And now when there's spots all over the lineup for players like Lundqvist or even Bixel and Bayreuther, like you mentioned, Bayreuther, who got injured right at the start of the AHL season, unfortunately. I absolutely think they both would have been called up certainly before Pouliot and probably before Petrovic either. So would Bixel have stayed up? I don't know. It depends on how his season went. Obviously Dallas has been pretty careful in the past not to necessarily call up young players if they don't think they're quite ready for it, because it can derail their game a little bit or create expectations, where maybe Dallas actually wants to season him a little bit more. But I do think that where Bixel was at and even what they saw over the summer with him, this would have been a situation where he would have gotten the call up had he been in Texas. But he wanted to go be closer to home and play in Europe, and Stars have no control over that. He has that option, and we'll see what happens. But you have to think he's sitting over there right now, wishing that he was getting that NHL paycheck, which he would have been if he had been called up today. So
absolutely. I was just looking at the Arizona Coyotes, and their second defensive pairing features a couple of guys that might be of some interest: Sean Dursey and Michael Kesselring. So, that's kind of interesting. But then you say to yourself, all right, how much better are they if they're playing on the second line of Arizona?
Yeah, I don't think those move the needle very much for Dallas when it comes to the playoffs. Obviously, if you look at a lineup like today, sure, getting full-time NHLers, definitely they'd be an improvement, probably over, players who are coming up. But again, Pouliot and Petrovic, they did fine today. Limited minutes. You have to shelter them a fair bit, and that means you have to lean on players like Harley and Lindell quite a bit. But yeah, they're those players, if you're looking for like a second tier target to give you more depth so that if this happens in the playoffs, you have more options. I could see Nil doing it. Again, you have to make the cap work. And, the Stars are thin on draft picks this year, especially. Yeah. So I think that only happens if it's kind of like a Gurianov for Dadonov trade last year, where you have maybe like a Lundqvist or someone going out to get one from back in because you think they fit better in the playoffs. But, we'll see.
It would be very costly, my friend, but I still dream of Adam Larson.
It all depends on what Seattle is thinking in terms of next year, right? What do they see as their kind of core defensive core? And I think he has some value as kind of a veteran there for them.
Yes,
I also, we've talked about him before for a reason, right? He's that sort of player where I look at him and say he's probably on the back nine of his career at this point, pretty solidly. But when you look at a defense this thin, it's hard not to think that he's exactly the sort of player that you want in a tough series in the playoffs, who has just enough to get you through 20 really tough games, right? So we'll see what they do. But hey, Jamie Alexiak's on Seattle too, so
that's true. That would be nice. I'd take it. I think Seattle's going to wait till the last second too, just 4 points out of a wild card spot right now. So
I think so.
Yeah, and they're playing better. My friend, you're a beast. Thank you so much for joining us on this Monday afternoon after quite a tilt. And for everyone out there, follow Robert at Robert Tiffin. Exciting things to come from Robert. And click when it comes to that D Magazine article. I really enjoyed it, and I thought that was a really good perspective on now's the time to pull the trigger. So thank you so much for joining us on this postgame. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Gavin. Appreciate it.
That's going to do it for another post-game edition. We will talk to you probably on Wednesday. Craig and I have a charity dinner tomorrow night, so that equals Craig making fun of me for 3 hours. So I will not enjoy that charity dinner, and we will probably recap that on Wednesday as I hear Robert laughing. So
a lot of people would pay to hear that, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing I want better than a long day at work on Tuesday and be a piñata on Tuesday night. That charity just continues to give and give. So for Robert Tiffin, I'm Gavin Spittle. Thank you very much for listening to Spits and Suds. We truly appreciate it right here on 105.3 The Fan. Have a great day.